Hi everyone, you're all very welcome to this GETDigital session today. My name is Edel Conway and I'm Professor of Human Resource Management and Organisational Psychology at DCU Business School. And I also lead up the work lab within the Irish Institute for Digital Business. Throughout this week in GETDigital, we're looking at a number of issues related to business, leadership and entrepreneurship. And in particular, we're focusing on how these businesses, regardless of their stage or their size, how they can transform their businesses from a digital perspective in order to achieve their business goals. And turning to this session now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Siobhan O'Shea, who is Client Services Director at CPL, and Siobhan does a lot of great work also within the Future of Work Institute at CPL, and she's a member of the leadership team there. And Siobhan today is going to look at the whole issue of personal branding. Just now for the audience, I would like to welcome you to raise some questions. We have a Q&A function within the session. Just to note that the chat function doesn't work, so we very much welcome your questions, and please use the Q&A function in order to do that, and hopefully Siobhan will be able to address as many of those questions at the end of her talk. So without further delay, it's a pleasure again to say hello to Siobhan O'Shea.
Many thanks, Edel, for the welcome, and to all of the team for the invite to speak to you today on a subject that I'm very passionate about, having worked in the recruitment sector for nearly 2 decades now. And I'm just going to kick off by sharing my slides. So I'm hoping that this will work okay. And just hopefully you can see them okay. I don't know, Rob, if you can confirm that.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, perfect, brilliant. Okay, so just to maybe give a little bit of context around my background first. So I currently work with CPL, as Edel mentioned, as Client Services Director. And a big part of my work over the last 18 years actually has been helping people in securing new career opportunities. And it's been something that's hugely rewarding when you see people get their dream job. And I know there'll be a mixture of people from different backgrounds on this session today. So really what I'm going to cover is a few different areas when it comes to personal branding and building a brand that stands out to help you secure that best opportunity, be it anything from securing a new job move or a new career opportunity to building your business if you're a business person who's scaling business. And what I'll cover really is the purpose, why you should do it, a little bit around how you specifically, the how of it, and then the importance of online as for all of us in this new era and this new decade, and building out our brand online, and then a little bit about networking and how we do this in this new virtual world that we're all facing as a result of the pandemic. So I suppose first of all, why brand? Why does it matter? And I will use product, I suppose, first of all, to set the scene. And in considering brands, I think we would all know that brands are really born of experience and reflect reputation. So in thinking about that, if you consider Starbucks and how ubiquitous and popular and globalized Starbucks are as a brand, and the fact that they sell 4 billion cups of coffee a day, why is that? What is it about that that makes us go and spend €3 a day on a paper cup coffee versus when we can perfectly do it at home using our own coffee machines or using instant coffee? And really, this is the differentiator, is the brand piece, and thinking about the image that it projects, the quality that we feel we're experiencing. It might be a connection to a barista that we've built up a relationship with over a period of time. It's a connectivity piece, going in and maybe sitting in the coffee shop. So we feel the value is there. And I actually just even worked it out this morning. For every, if you're buying a coffee a day, you're spending over nearly 1,100 a year just on coffees. So obviously you feel that it's worth it. And thinking about that and applying that then from a human perspective, there's a couple of standout people, I think, globally that we would all recognize for the power of their personal brand. And the first one I would highlight is Richard Branson. Richard Branson's personal brand is 100 times more powerful than the Virgin one. And the key reason why is he has over 10 million followers on LinkedIn. By far and away, the most followed professional on LinkedIn. And his personal brand is so powerful that it shines magic and light all over everything he does entrepreneurially and all of his Virgin brands. So if you think about it, if it wasn't for the magic of Richard's personality and what he brings in terms of dynamism, ultimately Virgin would just be an airline mobile financial fitness brand. So it is the power of personal branding can be hugely impactful in generating success and generating new moves, new career achievements. So it's something that we all need to be very aware of. And another person I would highlight as having that star factor when it comes to personal branding is Oprah. We all know her even by her first name. We don't even have to say Oprah Winfrey. Oprah is the richest self-made woman in America. She's currently worth over 2.6 billion. She's a media mogul, she's an entrepreneur, she's an Oscar-nominated actress, she's an icon. And if you think about the fact that her Oprah.com website averages 70 million views per page every year, that's phenomenal. And in terms, she's a powerhouse and she's leading when you think of that digital footprint that she has all over everything that we do. It's got that X factor, and that's what we're trying to encapsulate when we're thinking about applying some of that magic to ourselves and how we build our own personal brands. And you can see that the benefits are multi-pronged. So getting this right helps you build trust, and that can be building trust with maybe future employer, existing colleagues. It could be in building out your business. So it's absolutely critical that you do this authentically. That's really important. You can't fake this. You have to bring your true self to this process. It can also expand your network. And we're lucky in the Irish market where we live in a very small economy where it's like 2 degrees of separation. You have a huge opportunity to build out your network easily. It can also attract opportunities, and fundamentally that's why so many of us are focused on building out a personal brand, is because we want to have those opportunities, be it in the career or in the workplace, or in our personal lives. And then people who do this well, the Oprahs, the Richards, they create a lasting platform, and their personal brand tends to be something that we watch over years and decades, and it's incredibly impactful. So how do you go about doing this? What is brand you? Well, Jeff Bezos just coined a phrase that I think really is something we should all reflect on. And it is that personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. And I would challenge everyone on this call to ask themselves, what do you think people are saying about you when you leave the room? And is it what you want them to be saying? Because that's the important thing that I would even say as a takeaway from my session, is thinking about how do you want people to consider you as an employee, as a colleague, as a leader? Is it aligning to your expectations? And what can you do about your proposition to position it correctly? The leadership guru who first coined the phrase personal branding is a gentleman called Tom Peters. And he is a US leadership guru, and he would have coined these phrases again, that you are the CEO of your company, your own company, me.inc. And the most important job that you have for brand you is head marketeer of that brand you. And with a strong brand, you'll be able to differentiate yourself, and you will be able to maximize your potential. So the steps that you need to consider when going about this in creating a personal brand are 7 really that I've outlined. So first of all, it's about building your foundation. So what does that mean? I think it's about really understanding, what are you bringing to the table? What is your strengths, your attributes, your passions, your values, your beliefs? How do you want to communicate all of those? And who's your target market? What's special about you? What are your unique selling points and your unique proposition? And you need to consider all of that before you do anything. Then you need to think about who are you trying to target? Who is this all for that you're working on your personal brand? And again, in thinking about that, taking inventory, I suppose, of your assets in order to create the proposition. Going to number 4 there, if you have a website, are you optimizing it? I would challenge anyone who's even, currently maybe coming out of college or getting started, that you should, if you're looking for a career in digital, it's a great way of selling your attributes by setting up your own personal website, including lots of great content on it, video content, blog content, to showcase what you can bring to the table. And so aligned to that, you need to have a good and strong and powerful and impactful content strategy. And the same goes for visibility strategy. Are you visible on social media? Have you identified the appropriate channels that will work for you to build your personal brand? And then from there, when you start getting really good at this, you'll start building out a community. And that's where the real, exciting times can kick in. So the first thing I would think as part of that is stepping back from yourself and examining, where are you at in terms of your strengths, your weaknesses, the things you need to work on, how you come across interpersonally. Are you coming across the way you want to? Really examining, I think, all of the things that are going to make you stand out from the crowd and give you a competitive edge when it comes to visibility, be it in the online world or when you're maybe trying to go for a job and you want your CV to stand out, or you want your application to secure an interview for you. So these are things you need to do. And I wouldn't be afraid as part of that process to really look at every aspect of how you communicate. So these are just an example of some things that you need to consider. Are they up to par? Are they up to the standards that would be expected of a future employer or of your customers? And I'm sure you guys will have plenty more to add to this list of the things that can, contribute to how people consider your brand. But really consider all of these, and I'm sure we'll be sharing these slides afterwards, and think to yourself, right, how do I come across on video calls, and particularly in this climate now where all of our communications are pretty much virtual? Do I sound energetic? Am I making great, is my eye contact and my communication online doing me justice? These are all the little things actually add to the bigger picture. Is my how I present or public speak strong and effective in order to achieve the goals and objectives that I've set for myself? So you really need to take away all of these elements and really challenge yourself to go, right, could I be doing better? Is there any weaknesses here in how this is linking into my overall personal brand? And it's so easy to get help on this too. And so many people are happy to help and give you feedback. And that brings me on to my next point, which is really being clear about what are the great things that you rock at, for example. What are the things that you are interested in and that you will still be interested, and bringing those strengths out in how you communicate, because those are the things that you're probably going to work best at as well. So what are you an expert at? What are the things that people come to you for? And being very clear in how you communicate that in your brand proposition. So really that next point then is to ask others, ask people. People are really, more than willing to kind of contribute feedback into helping you align that process. It could be colleagues, it could be peers, it could be mentors. Don't be, I would often say to particularly people who are graduating, make sure that you have a mentor in your life, or somebody who's sponsoring you to help you on your journey. Because it can be fraught with lots of challenge and lots of setbacks, particularly in this climate where, a lot of organizations are even struggling to survive, let alone in a hiring phase. So, you need to be thinking about, okay, again, I'm trying to stand out from the crowd here. What could I be doing differently? And often going for that external and internal feedback from stakeholders can really make a big difference. And the same goes for if you're a business person as well, and trying to, grow to the next level or change or evolve your business in response to maybe the challenges that COVID-19 has presented. So there's a lot that I think can be taken on board by really looking and seeking for that input, and being prepared to take constructive feedback as well as part of that, that ask. So again, being strategic. There's a huge amount of time wasting that you could invest on this as well. So you need to be very clear, use your SMART goals, be very clear about the purpose of all of this. What is the goal? Who are you trying to target? What is the brand position that you need to achieve in order to meet the goals that you've set for yourself? What changes do you need to make? Are you associating with the right network to be able to support you on that journey? Is your attitude right? Are you full of positivity? And how is your image coming across online? So those are just some considerations that you need to take on board. And then in thinking about your online profile and your online persona, I suppose, first of all, the compelling, nature of being online is undoubtable. If you look at the stats that we now see in respect of digital around the world, and this is information from Hootsuite, is, over 7.75 billion are now online in some capacity. You look at those volumes of internet users and social media users, mobile users, the amount of time that we spend is phenomenal online. In fact, recent research has shown that we will probably spend 100 days of every year online, this year alone, 100 days. So, you link that to your personal brand again. You've got to be there, you've got to be visible, and you've got to have a strategy around it in order to optimize your opportunities. So what does that mean? I suppose really it means about thinking about, what are the platforms that will best appropriately work for what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to blog, LinkedIn is probably, from a business perspective and from a professional networking perspective, it's the one you need to be up on. Is your profile up to scratch? Have you a lot of connections? If you're only starting out, I always say, start aiming to build 500 to 1,000 connections really fast. The more connections you have, the more people you have who are seeing your content and whatever you're sharing online. And it can be incredibly successful in terms of securing opportunities for people. I see it all the time that people network through LinkedIn to create new roles, new opportunities for themselves. If you're looking for a first move or even a next move in the digital arena, some tips that we would give people in CPL would be, it's really good to put together a website with a portfolio, or even an example e-commerce store with a WordPress and WooCommerce, for example. Then you should set up GTM on the site with Facebook and Google Ads, and you can even add some sample blogs and articles up on it. So that type of thing, showing, bringing to life your learned experience from college or study or otherwise, and including that in your proposition can be really, strong and powerful. And then, I wouldn't be afraid on LinkedIn to connect directly with the companies that you're interested in working for. And that goes for all of us at any stage in our career. We should be connecting and building out our network with the people that we know are influencers, and that could have a high impact on our next move. And include a message that's personalized. Don't just do the add contact on LinkedIn. If you really want to, again, stand out, you have to really think about what will make your message resonate with that person and make them want to accept your connection. I think there's a lot of things that you can do when it comes to videos, lots of exciting things again that you can do as part of building your profile and your personal brand. And I think you guys would know better than I would even about what you can do that's exciting around that again, that could draw a lot of attention. So things like personalized Loom videos, for example, are some of the things that we've seen people do that can make a difference. So, I've highlighted here a load of different areas where you could actually, provide content, share content, raise that visibility piece. But there are some that are obviously more relevant to what you are trying to achieve than other. So it's about figuring out, what's the best use of my time. For example, for me, the best use of my time and where I spend my time on supplying content or driving content is LinkedIn and Twitter. Those are the best channels for the work that I do. But I'm not doing it. You can't be doing it and being fake. You have to do it and be genuine. You're trying to add value to others when you do share content and trying to make a difference. If it's all about what you're trying to get back yourself, that will come across, and it will come across as inauthentic, and you won't achieve the traction that you're hoping to achieve. But like there's a lot of different cool ways, again, across lots of these platforms that you can, create differentiations. So, it's really considering all of them, is it through how you've put together, I don't know, a slide share, or a podcast series is something I've seen people do in the past. And again, they include that as part of their CV and portfolio. So there's a huge breadth of activities, and you can be very entrepreneurial and innovative around this. And that's what we're seeing, again, organizations doing, even in terms of their brand propositions to customers. They're trying to be, creative and slick in terms of coming up with things that resonate, particularly with the digital natives who've, people like my teenagers who've grown up with technology all their lives. So they're savvy when it comes to, branding and what stands out to them in a proposition. And those are things that you need to apply to your personal branding as well. So moving on, I would always suggest that when you're focusing in on content and raising visibility, that you really zoom in on a couple of areas of subject matter expertise, rather than trying to boil the sea, which, you'll get lost out there in that internet orbit. So it's really thinking about what are the areas that you're going to focus on, and creating a consistent persona that's authentic. That's the important thing. This is not a robotic thing or a fake thing on all your social platforms and profiles. You nearly have to start a structured plan and strategy around it, so that you start building up momentum around your sharing. It could be about sharing something on Twitter once or twice a day. It could be then about sharing on LinkedIn once a month, once a week, whatever is a step up for you. For some people, they're not sharing on LinkedIn. They mightn't even be on LinkedIn. So it could be about getting yourself up on LinkedIn first and starting to build out your profile. Make sure you include a picture. Make sure you're always asking for testimonials if you've done any work for people. Even if you're in college, always asking for the recommendations can add some nice referencing on your profile. So be sure to do that. Be sure to highlight out anything you've achieved on your profile in LinkedIn, because people now, we are seeing it, employers when they're hiring absolutely do look at people's LinkedIn profile. So you should make sure that that is absolutely buttoned up and really sells you, as well as it possibly could. Make sure when you do go online and you start building out your personal brand online, that you're engaging with others, that you're joining groups that are relevant to you, or chats or communities. So in thinking about the areas of focus, so I'll use myself as an example. I'm obviously in the world of recruitment, so anything related to the labour market, employment, talent strategies is certainly going to be one area of focus. I'm particularly passionate about diversity and inclusion, so I would tend to drive a lot of content around that, because I'm involved in our work leading that up for our Future Work Institute, and that would be another area that I do a lot of work on. And then thirdly, probably another area of passion that kind of resonates easily for me and is easy for me to share is content around corporate and social responsibility, about giving back, making a difference in society. So you need to think about what are the things that you're passionate about, what excites you, when you go online, what are the kinds of things you love reading about, and how can you bring your own voice and your own ideas and suggestions to those areas of focus. So, be sure then to, once you do start sharing content, that you're tracking anyone who mentions you and you're responding, building out that engagement. Look, I'm up on LinkedIn since it was first founded, so I'm at nearly 13,000 contacts that I'm connected to now. And the goal is that you're trying to build that up as quickly as possible, because, obviously the more people you're connected to, the more people who become familiar with you. And all of that can really make the little things, again, can make the big difference. So finally, I would just say to talk about networking as a huge component of personal branding. Obviously, back pre-pandemic, we would have all loved going to events and shaking hands with people and having great conversations in person, and all of that has been, transformed forever, I think, as a result of what we've experienced over the last year. But it is to know that we have to adapt, and we have to embrace the new ways of networking remotely and virtually, because ultimately the most important aspect of it is your network is your net worth. Your net worth, I will guarantee you, over a lifetime of working will make a huge difference to the opportunities that come in front of you. And it's really important when you have that opportunity down the line to put your hand out to help someone that you're doing that, to pull them up along behind you. I mean, I've had the fortunate of experience of having people in my life who've, you know, leaned out to me and said, look, Siobhan, here's an opportunity for you. Please take it. And you know what, you will be in those shoes in due course, and it's incumbent on you to pay it back and pay it forward. So it's just something to note. It's a huge component of personal branding. It certainly is more challenging than it would have been when we were able to make eye contact and connect with people you know, face to face, but you need to adapt and embrace the new ways that we all have had to adapt of networking through Zoom calls. Make sure and keep your videos on so you can connect to people, so that people can, you know, absolutely, you know, see and remember you and do things that make you stand out as well. You know, like ask questions, be sure and ask questions, because again, people might remember your name for having asked the question. I often say, in terms of potentially, if you're really trying to have high impact, sometimes things you can wear can make a difference. Could be that was the girl who wore the red top, or the guy who wore the yellow tie, or the person who wore, you know, so whatever it is, again, that makes you stand out, those are the things that you're trying to achieve in building out a personal brand. And then, you know, I often say kids are full of confidence and enthusiasm when it comes to everything that they do in their lives. They don't have any fear. And I think as we get older, we're filled with fear, and it holds us back from doing things and going outside the box and taking on new challenges. So I would encourage everyone to embrace the courage, the superhero courage of children, in taking on new challenges that maybe take you a little bit out of your comfort zone, but that ultimately will really stretch you and help build your personal skills and your personal brand. And then finally, just as I finish up, there's some recommended reading that I would highlight if you're interested in learning more about this. From Tom Peters himself. He has a book called Brand You, and there's Reinventing Yourself and Steps for Building Out Your Future as well. So there's some good content that you can get. And look, there's zillions of articles online as well. If you even Google personal branding, there's a wealth of information from the Harvard Business Review, from Forbes, lots of different articles that you can do that microbite learning if you want to find out more context around anything that I've maybe outlined today. So finally, just to pass it back then to Edel to see if we have questions.
Siobhan, thanks so much. That was so insightful, and plenty of tips and nuggets of advice there for us. Okay, so we do have some questions, and the first one is a really good one. When building a new personal brand, do you recommend clearing all past social media activity, or should people have a professional only social account?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is one I've been asked often, and I think it really depends on what you're sharing personally. Would you share professionally? You know, that's the question I would ask you. You know, if you're sharing things potentially on your Twitter, and I would absolutely say with LinkedIn is a business professional network. It shouldn't really be used for other means. But I will say what has been really positive to see over the last year on LinkedIn is a lot of people are sharing, you know, how they're dealing with remote working, their personal side of how they've been, you know, navigating, I suppose, what's been a really challenging year. And I think we all love that, like the pictures of the baby up on someone's lap, or, you know, that type of thing, I think really connects and resonates and makes you feel like there's an authentic connection with someone. But on things like Twitter or other channels, I think, again, it boils down to if, you know, and I often think people say things on Twitter they would never say to someone in person. And if you have a profile or an account that's on that kind of zone, yeah, you know, you're not going to be able to use it for work, because if anyone does a search on your prior content, it could mitigate against what you're trying to achieve. So I would certainly say that it depends on if you're very comfortable with what you share personally. My Twitter, for example, is my personal and my professional sharing platform, but I have a Facebook account. I'm like one of those few middle-aged people who still is on Facebook, and you know that I don't share any work stuff on that. It's a purely personal platform for me. So I think you need to decide yourself, what are you trying to achieve with it? And, is it content that you would be happy for a future employer to see and to be judging you on? So I think that's the key aspect of it. And get feedback, ask other people, do you think I need to share, here's my current social platforms, content, etc. Is it fit for purpose? You'll get a quick answer, I tell you, probably within 5 minutes on it from that neutral external point of view. And sometimes we can be too close to what we're sharing and not really, see things how others would.
Yeah, I remember reading about research that said that about 2/3 of employers do use social media. They do check it, even though some companies would have policies.
Absolutely.
And it's fine for Twitter, maybe, and it's certainly fine for LinkedIn, which tend to be professional sites. But for Facebook, it could be dodgy for people to do that. So whether they just keep those private, maybe, so that they're not accessible, it's probably not a bad idea. Thanks very much, Siobhan. Another question: what is more rewarding, building a brand around who you truly are, or who you want to be or know that you can be?
Yeah, so look, I think it's intrinsically linked, because I think you shouldn't be, it has to be genuine and authentically building a brand about who you are to bring you where you want to be. So I don't think they're two separate things. I think they should be the one thing. Because if you're trying to create a profile or a personal brand for someone you want to be that isn't really genuine, it's not going to be organic. It's not going to come across as authentic, and your target markets will see that. So I think it has to come from who you truly are anyways, and then in order to build it up to where you're trying to go, but it shouldn't be separate from each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned how important it is to be authentic and maybe to have evidence to back up your achievements.
For sure. Yeah. I think giving examples, actually giving lived examples and being personal as well. I think people want to feel that they get to know you as a human, as well. And I think those are, if you look at the most viral content online, or the gurus who get like Simon Sinek or these kind of guys, they're very genuine, humble people. Brené Brown's another really good person to follow online, for anyone who's looking to kind of get more knowledge around this. It has to come from a place, like I couldn't blog on certain things that are just out of my comfort zone and that I'm not genuinely passionate about. So it's knowing that, I'm quite clear on that myself at this stage, but that's after 25 years of working. So it's taken a journey, and I think there can be a bit of trial and error on this too, that you may try a few things, you learn, you make mistakes, you learn, you go back again, try again.
Okay, good question and good response, Siobhan. Another good question: any tips for doing this when in a job, without making it obvious to your current employer that you're looking for new opportunities?
Yeah, look, I think there's lots of ways of doing this that, without making it obvious potentially to your current employer. I think, look, everyone should have a strong LinkedIn profile. Now that may raise, if you currently have no LinkedIn profile and suddenly now you're appearing on LinkedIn, that probably is going to raise someone's antenna. But I think you have to be honest with yourself and say, well, look, is this the job for you? If you're even worried about that, if you're worried about what your employer is now thinking in terms of if you start doing things to work on self-improvement, there's something wrong with the picture in the first place, and I'd be saying accelerate your move out of that organization, because you're clearly not able to be yourself in that role. But I would absolutely say, addressing it is that I'm looking to self-improve, I'm looking to taking feedback. I watch sessions, I attended GETDigital, like I think there's lots of things you can say. That's why you're, this lifelong learning piece, and is a great reason to be able to say I've taken some feedback. Could be I've taken some feedback from a mentor, from a coach. These were suggestions that were given to me that I need to work on myself on these aspects. So those can be ways of kind of taking on board new strategies on your personal brand that don't maybe kind of, you know, raise red flags. But I would say if you're worried about that, it's time to go.
Thanks, Siobhan. Another great question. Can Siobhan share 2 or 3 top tips towards creating a stronger brand through Twitter as a channel?
Through Twitter, yeah. So Twitter is, I'm a huge fan of Twitter, and it's been incredibly interesting to see how popular it has become, even more so, I think, through the past year. You know, I think the key thing is again, don't be a keyboard warrior. That's my number 1 tip. There's been a lot of keyboard warriors that I think have done themselves a lot of damage over the last, particularly the last couple of years. And we've seen how quickly this cancel culture is kicked in, where people are suddenly having to come off Twitter really fast because of these trolling and, you know, this really bad behavior. So again, when it comes to a professional personal branding piece on Twitter, I think blending work and life content tends to resonate with audiences and tends to connect more. If you're just sharing work content alone, I think people might get tired or bored, and you need to think about that. You're trying to achieve building out followers in order to draw attraction to, you know, you as a Twitter contributor, as a tweeter. Follow people who you think are good online on Twitter, you know, and learn from them. That's my second tip. You know, learn from those that are sharing content. What do you think they do well? And it comes back again to, you know, what's your subject matter expertise? What are you good at and what are you sharing? And thirdly, add value to Twitter. You know, share stuff that people will be interested in reading and learning about, or will make them feel good. You know, a lot of people have been sharing great pictures and great messages of kind of inspirational messages, or whatever it is that will add, you know, lift people up, add value, make them feel good. I think any of the Debbie Downer content, keep it away. You know, it's just not from a professional perspective, just no one wants to see that, I think.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan. Next question, this is for me, I think more so than for you. Is there a mechanism in DCU or elsewhere where young graduates or those in study can be hooked up with small SMEs that could get the digital help they might need, and the graduate student can get some work experience, learn and get good network access? It's really good. We do have mentoring programs, and sometimes it depends on the program that you might be doing, but we would try to hook up graduates or students actually with some of our executive master's students, and they do very much on an informal basis, but they volunteer in order to take on that role. And then we do have programs as well, which are directly targeted at SMEs. So again, some of them, sometimes they offer to provide mentorship to either students or young graduates. So I would suggest a good place to start is your program chairperson, either current or former, and let them know that you're interested in those opportunities and they can be arranged. Yeah, so what's the biggest mistakes you've seen in personal branding?
So I think there's a couple that I would highlight, and I know I mentioned a few already, but I think I might add is, firstly, maybe people start all great, full of good gusto to get going on a personal branding strategy, and then they lose all momentum and they stop, you know. So they maybe get going on sharing content and they're doing really well for the first month or two, and then it veers off a cliff. Because I think, you know, sometimes it takes time to build your connections. It takes time to build your connections on Twitter or LinkedIn, and you have to stick with it and be resilient to the fact that, you know, it's not a quick fix. It just doesn't happen overnight. And so that would be one. It's stay the course, you know, so stick with it. It takes time, it takes hard work. It's not like a magic bullet and overnight, you know, yay, now I have a really well-known personal brand online. So that's the first. I think the second is trying to cover too much content, you know, trying to cover too many areas, not be known for something specific. So if you're very clear, for example, there's a certain sector that you're really interested in working in, like, I don't know, it could be advertising or something, you know, or a niche area, retail, whatever. Try and make sure that you're quite specific in what you're sharing, and so that you connect to that audience and community. So it's really about being subject matter expert with deep penetration of what you're trying to achieve. And then thirdly, I would say that again, something too formal or too that feels not organic and natural will put people off as well. So again, it all links back into that authenticity piece.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well the importance of getting feedback from others, because sometimes
Definitely.
people don't see what it is they're really good at and how others perceive
Yeah.
them in terms of their strengths. So that can be good as well.
Absolutely. And it can be dispiriting too, actually, just to flag this, can be dispiriting. And sometimes I still have it all the time, where you share a piece of content, you think it's going to do really well, you put a lot of work on it, like a blog, for example, and it gets hardly any traction or hardly anyone viewing it. And that is part of the journey that you have to go on. You have to accept that some things will connect and others won't. But it can be hard if you're trying to build up, everyone wants the likes, that adrenaline buzz from your content connecting, and if that doesn't happen, you have to be prepared for that, but that's okay, that's part of the process.
Great, thank you. Good question, and more great questions coming in. Are there any things you see people posting or doing on LinkedIn that you would advise against?
It's been really interesting because there's been such a change this past year, and nothing is off the table, I think, in terms of what people are sharing at the minute on LinkedIn. And I quite like it, actually, because I think, it feels more humane and more personalized, given how many challenges people are facing. But I think, again, it's about the positivity piece, versus negativity. I think people who go online hit the keyboard warriors again, bringing negative content out in or giving out about things, that's stuff you don't really want to be associated with. There's plenty of channels that you can deal with grievances. And I think where I see people dealing with grievances on LinkedIn, that's a real turn off for me personally. And particularly more than ever, we're all struggling with our well-being and we want to stay resilient. I much prefer to see uplifting content that really adds value to me and to the audiences that it's been shared with as well.
Thanks, Siobhan. How would you recommend best managing time between getting your own work done and maintaining a regular presence online? That's a very good question.
It is, yeah. And you see, I think once you get in a flow of it, you start building it into your work day. And I think it's being about absolutely ruthless with your time too. So, to share a piece of content, and I'd follow the law of the thirds as well too. So you can share other people's content. It could be an article from, I don't know, from Forbes, or, something that one of the leadership gurus like the Brené Browns or whoever has already shared. And all you're doing is personalizing. That takes 2 minutes to go, really loved the point that Brené said there about human connection or whatever, so there's really easy, quick fixes on this to get yourself going, that it doesn't all have to come from a lot of hard work by yourself. And I think if you're starting out, that can be a nice, easy way of getting up and running. But I do think then if you're really serious about going next level on it, it's just about making time for it. Is it important enough for you to, to carve out that time to write a blog, which could take hours, it could take, depending on how experienced or seasoned you are at doing it, because you have to put maybe research in. So it's about deciding, is that important enough for me or not, and what I'm trying to achieve in building out my personal brand. If it's not, then that's okay. So I don't feel you're failing if you haven't done that. There's lots of other ways you can circumvent this. With Twitter, it can be just resharing other people's content. If you're, like even the GETDigital conference, everyone should be online sharing what was good about it, what did they learn from it, what were 3 takeaways, what connected. Those are easy ways. Take a picture of something they saw from over the sessions, that connected, share that on LinkedIn. Here's what I learned, top 5 tips, top 3 tips. Those are all loads of things that you tend to see online that get a lot of engagement, because people are always looking to self-improve and to continuously learn. So I think anything like that you can bring to the table will connect and resonate.
Great, thank you. How do people who like personal privacy navigate the new world of having to put oneself out there all the time? on social media. And I think that's particularly people who might be shy,
Yes.
genuinely
Yeah.
shy, and
Yeah.
don't necessarily feel
It's hard.
comfortable.
It is hard, you know, and it's funny because a lot of people ask me, why don't you have an Instagram? You're busy on LinkedIn, and I actually just have made a call on it, that it's like I've enough going on between Instagram or with LinkedIn and Twitter that I couldn't even go down that road, even though my daughter set one up for me hilariously and put a load of pictures on it. But I think you have to decide yourself what you're comfortable with, what you're not, what your boundaries are. And I think I'm very clear on my boundaries on, particularly on Twitter, because that's where I see a lot of content that is inflammatory and can get everyone really riled up. So you have to know what are your personal boundaries and what you're comfortable sharing. I do think it goes back to what I shared in terms of the digital numbers. We all have to be present now online. That's just the way it is. If we're spending 100 days on it, for goodness sakes, we're missing a trick if we're not out there visible in some capacity on the channels that people find talent on, the LinkedIn's, even if it is Twitter, to see what you share. So you're potentially missing out on opportunities by not leaning into it, even if it takes you out of your comfort zone and it's an extra challenge for you. So look, I think it's about establishing for yourself how desperately do you want whatever it is that having a presence will give you, and then you have to square that off yourself. But I do appreciate it, particularly with, we're hearing this now, just these Facebook data, leaks, and, it's very disconcerting when you hear stuff like this. It can be unsettling. And I know a lot of people are very strong in their personal privacy as well. So you may decide you don't need it, and that's okay too.
Thanks, Siobhan. Good answer. What do you think of the forced professional tone lots of people are using on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's an interesting one now. I'd love more context on that, actually, because I don't feel, I actually feel it's done the opposite way. I feel it's less, I think it's more relaxed actually on LinkedIn than I've ever seen it before. I don't know what you think yourself, Edel, but from my perspective, yeah, I think if it is forced, it will be evident and it just doesn't come across great, So I think, again, it comes back to that, bring your own voice, bring your true self. Don't try and be someone else. Don't try and aspire, if it's like, I tend to bring my own humor to things or put my own spin on things, or, challenge maybe information that's come across on trends or that type of thing. So, I would never approve of doing something forced. Again, it just doesn't achieve what you're trying to achieve from that.
Yeah, and it is probably about being authentic. Going back to your point. Yeah,
for sure.
Be yourself, and maybe not putting things on that as you would text somebody. So I suppose you have to write professionally.
Yes. Well, I think, so, and actually the younger, and I see it with my daughter, like all the, the emojis and the use of, shortened language and all of that. Like, obviously you're not going to do that, but I don't think we're seeing that on LinkedIn either yet. Anyways, I should say, give this Gen Z a chance, and they might change that. But I do think that, if you're feeling it's forced, that's absolutely buddy up with someone who's very a LinkedIn, super user, to be able to help you with that. Because if you're feeling that it's a lot of hard work for you, don't struggle by yourself on it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Any tips on how to get a mentor in an industry you don't currently work in?
Yeah, look, I think you would be amazed if you reach out to people that you admire. I've always seen it. People will give you a call, or you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve. Just asking someone to be your mentor is wasting that other person's time, actually. You need to explain to them what you're trying to achieve from them being a mentor. So it could be, I'd love a call on a specific subject, or I really respect you because of the work you're doing in XYZ. Could you give me 20 minutes? I'm a graduate. I would love 20 minutes of your time, so that you optimize that person's time and also what you get out of it too. So I think just generically asking someone to be a mentor is not the way to go on this. I think you need to I'd love some mentoring advice on XYZ. And I think reaching out in LinkedIn or asking someone to connect you, referrals, all of those type of channels. I know a lot of, I'm assuming DCU is the same as people will buddy you up and they will help you open out those doors as well so that you can make those connections. I think leaning on your network is absolutely critical, and that's where your network really comes into play. Being able to get maybe a piece of advice on something that is going to help you on your journey, as opposed to needing maybe a full-time mentor for years on end, because very few people can maybe offer that. But a lot of people, and leaders in particular, because they've been down this road, they love giving back time to others who are on their journey. You very rarely see it that somebody won't try and help you in some capacity, even if it's connecting to someone else who's better positioned to help.
I think that's so true, and you'd be surprised how helpful people want to be, and LinkedIn is exactly the place to start. And
For
maybe
sure.
using existing connections for introductions, or even just introducing yourself and say, this is what I need, and I wonder if you
completely. And I see it all the time. I'm an executive coach actually, and there was a lady I was coaching just a few months ago, and she secured her next job opportunity through LinkedIn. And then she also got brilliant mentoring. Everyone she reached out to came back to her. It was fantastic to see it, in terms of everyone she reached out to engaged with her, even if they didn't have an opportunity to talk to her about, they gave her time, which helped her in her process, and gave her plenty of kind of richness and knowledge and insight to help her for when she was interviewing then. And she got a job opportunity actually out of it.
It's really good. And actually, for just come back to the question, a really good place to start in reaching out from a DCU perspective is to look at the alumni office and use them, because it's a perfect opportunity for the alumni office to reach out to ask for people who might provide to provide help or support or guidance.
And actually, Del, if you don't mind me adding, I might say that, of course, I work for CPL, Ireland's largest talent solutions provider. So if you're looking for help, please reach out to any of our team or our consultants. I mean, this is what we do day in, day out, is help people to connect. And it can be more than just about your next job search. It can be about how do you go about making new connections or, finding a mentor. So look, it would be something that our people are well used to supporting all our customers on.
That's great to know, Siobhan. That's a very generous offer, of course.
No problem.
I just have another question. All of the questions are answered, except for one that I have. And it's just in relation to, if you're in an organization, you're employed, how do you build your brand once you get the job? And build your brand if you want to progress your career within the organization. So maybe your brand and your positive brand got you the job, but how do you keep it going? And I think that's important because, unfortunately, a lot of graduates and so on will be entering organizations in a remote context, and that brings its own challenge. And any of the research that we know about remote working, because we know a lot about remote working because it happened long before the pandemic. Key findings are that people feel that they're invisible to the organization and that harms or damages their career prospects. And so I wonder, if everybody is going online, how do we enhance our visibility and strengthen networks within the organization in order to progress our careers?
That's such a brilliant question, Adele, particularly when a huge amount of people are onboarding remotely now, so they're not even getting that opportunity to have the water cooler conversations or learn by osmosis from sitting around, more seasoned colleagues. And I think you actually have to work harder at this. And I think it's actually incumbent on employers to provide really strong buddying schemes and, mentoring or sponsoring programs so that those new entrants are being kind of well supported on their journey. And that's not just actually for graduates too. I think even, people who are coming in at all levels really need to know, who do I go to ask just those questions that you might have just turned to a colleague and asked, and it can be harder to navigate the system culturally when you're not familiar with all the norms. So I think it's really important to keep a focus on internal personal branding when you start a new job. And that can be about consciously thinking about, I need to arrange X amount of internal meetings with new colleagues to make a connection. And particularly where it's cross-functional, because you might be meeting team members from your own direct team relatively, regularly, but it's to navigate all the rest of the ecosystem in an organization. That takes a bit of extra work and effort on your behalf. And I think you need to do that. I think personally volunteering to deliver training is a great way of getting to know a lot of people. I've done that myself over the years, because you get to, if you're training loads of people in an organization, you get to meet a great kind of range and diversity of your colleagues. I think leaning in for opportunities, again, maybe to deliver, support on events or CSR or some of the committee works that go on. If you've any activities that go on in your organization, like challenges, like every organization now has lots of different programs of activity around well-being. Join all of them, make sure that you contribute, make sure that you're just doing everything you can to be an active participant in all of the company activities. And I think those are great ways of trying to, again, raise your visibility. It could be offering to help, maybe on your CSR, or, helping on, I don't know, even cross mentoring programs that take place within organizations. So anything you hear or see going on that can help you to get to know more people within the organization are things that you should raise your hand for. And I would have said that would have been the case pre-pandemic, as well as more so than ever the case now in this current climate, where we're not getting to meet someone for a quick cup of coffee, which is what I would have done when I joined CPL 5 years ago, is I met all the key people I needed to meet for a cup of coffee. And it was a great way before I even started my job of having a lot of, good connections and relationships already established before I ever walked in the door. And that's much harder now when you're starting a new job. Or moving on and being onboarded, I suppose, remotely as well, having to navigate that system. There's a lot of content and research on this that we provide on CPL on our website too. So I'd highly recommend that people look at that, about how you navigate the system, loads of tips and tricks and ideas and food for thought through our blog content. So I'd highly recommend having a look at that too, to support yourself if you're in that position.
Yeah, and so much of it, of what's missing now, is the serendipity. So meeting somebody on a corridor, and being introduced to them, or somebody sits at another table in the restaurant or canteen, and you're introduced to them, and we don't have people walking past, or people coming in on Zoom meetings and so on. So you miss those introductions.
Even somebody didn't walk to, I was walked around the floor, you're walked around the whole offices, and in half an hour, you've probably met most of the key stakeholders you need to meet, versus now it's a lot more multi-layered. You've got to now go organize calls, ask for people to, it probably takes a few hours extra actually, where other things, this new virtual world has actually saved us a huge amount of time on things like interviewing and all of that. We've really accelerated interview processes as a result of the changeover, but I think there's other aspects of working life that have been impacted, so you have to work that little bit harder on it.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but that's really good advice in that regard. So Siobhan, once again, we have all questions answered.
Oh, great.
Very well timed.
Perfect.
Because it's still not 2:00 yet. So, well, actually, it's exactly 2:00. So thanks so much for your time. You're so generous with your time as always. And thanks for the offer for anybody who's listening to reach out. Hopefully they can reach out to you on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So that's a good starting point. So Siobhan, once again, on behalf of everyone in IIDB, and as part of the GET seminar series, we'd really like to thank you again, and that was really, really good.
Super. Thanks a million for having me,
okay,
and
bye,
hope the rest of it goes really well.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Siobhan. Bye. Bye.